In the entire history of modern capitalism, there is one company that stands above the rest. Not for its innovation, but for its ability to manufacture a reality. Most monopolies try to corner a market. De Beers didn't just corner a market, they hacked the human operating system. For the last 100 years, the global population has been under a collective spell. We have been convinced that a specific arrangement of pressurized carbon, one of the most common substances in the galaxy, is rare, precious, and the only valid symbol of eternal devotion. This is not a story about geology. It is a story about the greatest confidence trick ever played. A story of how a secretive syndicate engineered a tradition, manipulated the global supply chain, and rewrote the culture of the entire planet. To understand the scale of the illusion, we must look back to 1870. Before this era, diamonds were genuinely rare. They were geological anomalies found in riverbeds in India and Brazil, worn only by kings, queens, and the ultra-wealthy. But then, miners in South Africa discovered the Kimberley pipes. The reality on the ground changed overnight. They weren't finding a few diamonds. They were finding tons of them. The market was suddenly flooded. In any normal economic system, when supply explodes, value evaporates. Diamonds were on the verge of becoming as cheap and common as turquoise or quartz, but the investors in the mines refused to let their fortunes vanish. They knew that diamonds had zero intrinsic value. You cannot eat them, you cannot live in them. Their only value was their perceived scarcity. So if the scarcity didn't exist in nature, they would have to manufacture it. Enter Cecil Rhodes. Rhodes was a British imperialist with a ruthless vision. He understood that to save the industry, competition had to die. He bought up the claims. He crushed the smaller miners. He consolidated the entire region into a single monolithic entity. De Beers Consolidated Mines. By 1900, De Beers controlled practically 90% of the world's rough diamond supply. They ceased to be a mining company and became a cartel. They established a distribution system in London known as the Site. It was a display of absolute power. De Beers would invite a select group of dealers into a room and hand them a box of diamonds. The dealers couldn't negotiate price. They couldn't choose the stones. It was take it or leave it. If a dealer refused, they were cut off forever. De Beers became the faucet. If demand was high, they opened the tap. If demand was low, they closed it. They created artificial scarcity. The diamonds were never rare. They were simply locked in a vault. But controlling the supply was only half the battle. By the late 1930s, the empire faced a threat that no vault could fix. The Great Depression had decimated the global economy. In Europe, the clouds of war were gathering. The public had stopped buying useless rocks. The price was in free fall. De Beers realized that to survive, they couldn't just sell a commodity. They had to sell an emotion. In 1947, they hired the American advertising agency N.W. Ayer. Their brief was audacious, to convince every person on Earth that a marriage wasn't legitimate without a diamond. They didn't just buy billboards. They launched a psychological guerrilla war. They sent lecturers into American high schools to talk to teenage girls about the history and romance of diamonds, grooming the next generation of consumers before they were even of marrying age. They paid Hollywood studios to rewrite scripts, ensuring that leading men proposed with massive stones on screen. And then, a copywriter named Francis Garrity wrote 4 words that would become the most profitable slogan in history: "A diamond is forever." It sounded like a romantic promise. In reality, it was strict economic protectionism. De Beers knew that diamonds have terrible resale value. If the public started reselling their jewelry, the market would flood and prices would crash. "A diamond is forever" was a command. Do not resell this stone. By tying the rock to the concept of eternal love, they took the supply off the market permanently. Once the culture was hooked, they decided to set the price. They literally invented a rule out of thin air, the 2 months salary rule. Think about the genius of that. A private corporation created a social tax that demanded 16% of a man's annual income. If you didn't pay it, the advertising implied you were cheap. They weaponized social shame to drive profits. But the ultimate proof of their power happened in Japan. In the 1960s, Japan had no tradition of diamond engagement rings. Zero. It wasn't part of the culture. De Beers saw this as a challenge. They flooded the country with advertisements linking diamonds to modern Western freedom. They equated the stone with being civilized. It worked. In just 14 years, Japan went from having almost no diamond market to becoming the second largest buyer in the world. They didn't just sell a rock, they terraformed a civilization. Today, the monopoly has finally fractured. New mines in Russia, Canada, and Australia have broken the stranglehold, and lab-grown diamonds are proving that the stones are chemically simple to mass produce. But the spell remains. We still view these stones as the ultimate prize. We still pay thousands of dollars for a pressurized piece of carbon that is plentiful in the ground. It stands as the most successful marketing campaign in human history. They took a rock with zero survival value, and they tied it to the one thing humans value most: love. And the world bought it.